May I ask a question? I'm still studying the forest tradition, and I have a really deep impression from the forest tradition. Yeah, someday I want to introduce the forest tradition into Korea. The Korean monks will really be a place to see the real Dharma in the forest tradition. Then one thing I'm still confused about in the forest Dharma is about the Samadhi. And when I read the first tradition books, the terms about Samadhi, the Appana Samadhi and Jhana, some group Ajahns were using the different words about the state of mind. And I was wondering what the Ajahn Chah was using to describe the state of mind. If it was like the jhana or the Appana Samadhi, with some group Ajahns say the Appana Samadhi and jhana is the same, and some group Ajahns are saying they are totally different. So I was still confused about that.
Well, like samatha meditation is you focus on an object. So you choose a subject, like on a breath or casino, whatever, and then you concentrate on it, and that will you go through. As you absorb into it, then you have that. You become one with the object, and then like with mindfulness meditation, the samadhi is on this wider range. So it's sama samadhi. So you're not focused. You're not shutting off anything, but you're receiving everything. And so like one point can be one dot on the floor, or it can be the whole. It can be the whole completeness, or it can be a point. And so, I found what I found difficult in the beginning was trying to get the samadhi through concentrating on an object. Was motivated not so much very much motivated as from a personal need to get something. So I had a lot of willpower and could make myself do things. But even when I did get levels of concentration, I'd keep losing them. So I become increasingly more kind of controlling. And then when I moved to Wat Pah Pong with Ajahn Chah, then I couldn't, the ability to kind of control the environment. I had to more or less receive the environment as I experienced it. I had to join a community and work with it. So that was more this sense of mindfulness and awareness, in which I began to see this sense of myself trying to get something. So I've always, for me, the point that I valued from Ajahn Chah was getting to see the obstructions of grasping out of ignorance, and so even when I'm grasping Buddhist ideas or Buddhist opinions out of ignorance of, there was still this sense of me and mine and related to my own practice or my view about Buddhism. And then through this, so I found my real interest lie with the Noble Truths, Four Noble Truths. Rather than worrying about the levels of samadhi or jhanas and that, I became found it more interesting to investigate suffering, its causes and cessation and path, rather than spending a lifetime trying to control everything so I can get tranquilized. So, and because I did have very tranquil experiences, in the beginning, and that made me desire it created this desire all the time to have more and more tranquility. And I began to see how that desire and that grasping out of ignorance was the problem. And then I began to investigate this Sakya Ditti, this self-personality view, and began to witness, observing myself, the views I had or the way I thought. Not to criticize, but just to see how wanting to attain Nibbana is certainly a noble aspiration, but coming from ignorance and Sakya Ditti, it can be, you're grasping the idea of it rather than actually finding, what that really means in terms of here and now reality. So, and then different teachers have different ways of practice. So this is why it can be confusing, because different Ajahns and that have say no samatha, or you have to have samatha, or jhana, or you don't need them, there's so many conflicting views coming from different teachers, but and so this is where not that anybody's wrong about it, but what I encourage you to do is see how it affects you. Somebody comes across in a very authoritarian way and says, "You're practicing all wrong. You should do it my way." And how does that affect you? You can, at least you can know, whether, you feel, does it create doubt or resentment or faith or whatever. So you're more encouraged to observe how you're, how teachers talk. Like it right now, just observe your own mind, how you hear me. I'm not asking you to believe me, but to observe, what I'm saying, how does that affect you? Now then you're getting to the source, to the center of conscious reality, of observing, rather than figuring out whether I'm right or wrong, or what this teacher says, and whose view is the right one, and trying to figure it out on that level. You just end up in confusion. So it's more encouraging. I see myself more trying to encourage people to awaken rather than telling them how to practice, or just trying to start another kind of method of meditation called sound of silence or something. I don't want to do that. It's just I don't want to create another method, but to how I can help you the best is to encourage you to be aware rather than tell you how you should practice. Because even though I might tell you, give you good advice, if you're not aware of your, how you're receiving this and the reaction and the result of what I say, how your reactions you have, even though I might give you good advice, it's still not coming from your awareness. It's coming from Ajahn Sumedho said you should do it like this, and that's not. It doesn't work like that. It's like learning to trust yourself, to be aware, and recognize this is what you can actually recognize and know, and then what other people say, whether it's true or false, whatever, you're aware, of how it affects you. And then in terms of, the lifestyle, then you conform action, speech to the way the Korwat or the Vinaya according to the monastery you're living in. So you're not trying to even cling to Vinaya, it has to be like this or it's wrong, but you're just, it's an agreed way to live, so that you're not endlessly negotiating about the externals. You're kind of making it easy if you do it like this, so then you can observe your own, loves, hates, aversions, criticisms, complaints, from this position of observing rather than judging. Like when you start criticizing, like if you feel anger towards somebody here, and then somebody says, a good monk shouldn't be angry, and then I'm making you feel guilty. So say you're angry with me, and then I say, if you were a good monk, you wouldn't be angry. You would have conquered anger. and then you start feeling guilty about it. But if you're trusting in your awareness, and you have confidence in that, and I say, a good monk shouldn't be angry. You can be aware of your own, reaction to my kind of scolding or kind of telling you how you should be is like this. And so this gives you the foundation to observe from, to investigate Dhamma. Because if you're just operating from what others tell you, then it can be very good advice, but it's still you aren't seeing what you're doing. You're merely believing in what a teacher says without observing this, your own grasping of their teaching. And you hear a lot of, Ajahn Chah said, and Ajahn Chah's way. The people quote Ajahn Chah all over the place. It makes it, it's like God, makes pronouncements. And so this is understandable. I mean, I've done it myself, so I'm not particularly blameless on that level. But also, it's not to be encouraged for you to just think that what the great teacher says is absolutely right all the time. But you can, because it's a kind of grasping of what somebody else says. So that's the emphasis is opening to this grasping, this avijja, ignorance of Dhamma, desire that comes out of that ignorance, and grasping of desire. So those three, if we have these are the causes of suffering, of dukkha, grasping desire out of ignorance. So then, ignorance then is not kind of being illiterate or anything. It just means not being aware of the way it is, of not recognizing Dhamma in the present. So in this way, then what I'm trying to encourage you to do is be open to the present and observe here rather than just be aware of what this monk says or how they do things, or compare it to Korean tradition, or and be caught up in trying to sort it all out on the thinking with a thinking mind. Because you can really develop from this, like authority. People, you meet people with very strong sense of authority and with a lot of strong views, and they can quote scriptures to back them up. And so this I found very intimidating personally. So somebody says, well, in the Sutta Nipata, the Buddha said this, and this is, this is a kind of peremptory kind of, the scripture says this, and this is the word of God, and saying it in a very confident, absolutely confident way, and then I'd feel very intimidated. You see, emotionally, I found that intimidating. So then, through seeing that, then I'd observe this how not that I was trying to disprove anything, but to use the situation for observing my own feeling of when somebody speaks with great authority and knowledge, it feels like this, and trusting that, to be aware of it, because it is a reaction, emotional reaction to people that have a lot of confidence or have a lot of knowledge about something. In this holy life, you're living in a world with strong views about right and wrong all the time, about God.
Ajahn say body and mind are separate, but okay. But in my practice, I see basically that the body conditions the mind and vice versa. So how can one see beyond that illusions?
Like the relationship is always that awareness is the way, and the body. Like you can be aware of your body now as experience, or aware of your emotional state or your thoughts or memories. And so this is like this awareness includes the body and the mental states. And so therefore it's more like, like the Western mind, we tend to say consciousness is something in your brain. At least I did. I had this idea that it's in here. But then in meditation, like Kayanupassana Satipatthana, I'm actually aware of the body as experience here and now. So posture, breathing, and physical Vedana, pain and whatever. So it's kind of vibratory realities you're aware of as that are happening here and now, and that's so the body is in the consciousness, and then the self, the sense how you see yourself as a person, changes according to the conditions. So according to the weather or whether you're being praised or blamed or whatever. So but that awareness is a constant. It's something that has it sustains itself. It's not, you don't create it. That's where this is recognizing it. Like Four Noble Truths is all about recognizing, realizing. Like Third Noble Truth is about realizing the cessation of conditions. And even when love, hate, and that cease, and there's still consciousness and awareness. So you're learning to this connected mindfulness, where you're not through trying to hold on to anything, but through letting go of everything. And then whether the body is sape sankarani cha, all conditions are impermanent, and so is the sanya, sankara, Vedana, sankara, sanya, sankara, vijnana. And then vijnana is sense consciousness. So your senses, whether you're conscious through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body. But then there's consciousness isn't dependent on the senses. It's behind the senses. So sensual things arise and cease. So you're with awareness and consciousness and wisdom. It's like you're informing consciousness with wisdom. So like Ajahn Chah say, obrom tua eng, doi panya, to rather than out of ignorance or cultural biases or opinions. So like this cessation, when just in the here and now, you feel something, you're aware of its presence, and then it ceases. That's a discerning. You're discerning the presence and absence of an emotion or a thought or a memory. And that awareness is the constant factor in all that, where the emotion changes. Different emotions arise through various conditions. So whether you're happy or sad depends on the conditions for happiness or sadness. But awareness isn't happy or sad. It allows you to observe in consciousness, through consciousness, the arising and cessation of emotions, of sensory impingement, of physical Vedana. So this is a relationship then of the unconditioned and the conditioned. So, like for me now, the unconditioned is reality, it's real. And then the conditions are, it's a fact. Where before, I thought, in condition, I can't figure that one out. And, just beyond me, here I am with my problems and my feelings and habits and emotions, and this whole conditioning was so strong, sense of my reality is me, and my personality and my emotional world is real to me. And now, after all these years, you just see it in terms of it's Dhamma rather than seeing it, giving it any sense of anything more than what it is in the present. And the reality is, like Third Noble Truth is reality, is realizing. And then, to cultivate, realize cessation. Cessation then of conditioned phenomena is reality, is where conditions arise and cease. That's here in your citta. Here you can observe the emotions, love, hate, like, dislike, come and rise and cease. And so it's in the here and now. And your refuge is in awareness, in Buddha Dhamma Sangha, and then you have this perspective on your own personal assumptions, your emotional habits, fears and desires and whatnot. You have perspective. They don't mean you don't have any feelings anymore, but you have, your relationship to them is knowing rather than clinging. It's like consciousness is knowing. This is a conscious realm that we're experiencing, and it's now we know things from this. When we have a form like a human body, then we know from this point. So I see you from this point, and you're in the consciousness now. I'm looking at you. You're in consciousness. Now I can't see my own face at this moment. I can see your face. But so this consciousness then is being born as a human entity. Is you're experiencing the universe from this one point of this form. Now then your relationship to the universe then is not to see yourself as this form and limited and bound into this conditioned personality and in human identity with the physical body, but the awakened, like Buddha Dhamma Sangha, is awakened consciousness, but still operating from this point. So your experience is observing rather than is being the knowing, the Putto knowing Dhammo, knowing Dhamma, Buddha knowing Dhamma, rather than this person trying to get something or get rid of something or become something. And that's where, like for me now, this sense of Bhutang Saranam Gacchami, the kind of Theravada Buddhism, ceremony, and people we take the three refuges and the 5 precepts, and so Bhutang Saranam Gacchami. Then, so it can be just perfunctory chanting or ceremony. But to me, they contemplate what is a refuge. What do you mean by sarana and refuge? And then it's a place, when you go to a refuge, you're looking for a safe place to be. Refuge is, in the English sense of refuge, it goes for safety to a refuge. Well, right now, what is the only refuge? The safety, like I could pull out a gun and I don't have one. I mean, this realm here is very uncertain. The sky could fall in, or a suicide bomber could blow himself up. And I mean, so even though these are not likely at this time, monasteries are fairly generally considered safe places to be. But they can also, recognize that just refuge in a place is not a real refuge. So then this awareness is the only refuge, because it's with you all the time. Whether you're here or in Iraq or wherever, you have this awareness, and this is actually, what you can trust, and then this is what you can recognize for yourself and realize it and cultivate. Like the fourth noble truth is cultivating awareness, so that your samadhi sama sangapo is, your right understanding, right intention, and everything comes together there, and it's developing it. Because at first insight might be just a flash or something, you might get a kind of flash of insight, and then it's easy to just fall back into the old habit patterns of me and mine and whatnot. But also, after that initial flash, something in you does change that you may not be aware of when life gets difficult. You think, I've been meditating how many years and I'm still get angry and selfish and whatnot, and then you feel you're not getting anywhere. Or more and more you stop believing that and trusting more in awareness. And then then in Bhutang Saranam Gacchami, to me that's just a beautiful thing to be able to say and be able to think, taking refuge in the Buddha. But it really it's not just sentimental religious idealism, but it's reality itself. It's awareness itself. It's real. It's recognizable. It's not abstract or subtle or refined or precious. It's observable, knowable here and now. And you are that. You're not what you think you are, but this is, in terms of using language, you are this awareness. This awareness is your true nature. Before you become this person, this personality or this body. Well, like right now, you can just listen to the sound of the cicadas, and then to open, the sense of opening wide. It's not like concentrating narrow. It's not samatha, but it's opening wide, and this is a sense of embracing the present. So you just notice what first comes up, like the cicadas are the most obvious sound I'm hearing now. And the kind of ringing insect sounds. And then as you kind of relax more, and you're not just focused on that, you begin to notice subtle sound behind it all, or a vibration. So it's more attitude of opening, listening, receiving, relaxing. Because like so much of, my problems with meditation were this obsessiveness, like trying to concentrate, and I began to notice like concentrating on an object tends to make me more tense. I tend to contract the body, and so there's a different. You become aware of this kind of intensity of concentrating on something, in which I'm trying to control, get rid of everything, and just focus on one thing. Where this is the opposite, where you're opening to everything, and it's more like using the ability to listen, because hearing is sense of listening and hearing is with you all the time, whether you're in a dark room or in a jungle or in a city or alone, whatever. All the time, even if I used to practice in the London Underground, just sound of silence, quite pleasant, so London Underground, quite pleasant for me. In the traffic jams in Bangkok or in London, so your attitude changes from controlling and trying to make things according to one's desires to just receiving and listening. So you see, when I found like this. There's in the calendar, did I give you one of the Amravati calendars? The first, the January month, there's a picture of me on it. But it also has my favorite verse from the scripture. And there is the unborn, uncreated, unformed, unoriginated. Therefore there is the escape from the born, the created, the formed, and the originated. So this has always been I've always found the most profound, pure metaphysical statement in any religion or philosophy, because it's just so precise, and it uses like the created, the formed, the originated, the conditioned. This we can imagine, So just in the word, in language, you can imagine, even fantasies, you can imagine ghosts out there, or create fantasy world in different colors, different forms. And then, so the formed and the created, the originated, the born, is what we're generally stuck with, what we're attached to. And then this is always, in Buddhist terms, this is the cause of suffering, being blindly attached to the created, the formed, the originated, the born, is that we're always in this, we suffer from fear and anxiety, fear of death, self-consciousness. We're always subject to some form of humiliation or pain, or, so with self-consciousness, we're in what others think. The whole sense of a personality and cultural conditioning is based on the formed and the conditioned and the created. But then the statement is there is the unborn, uncreated, unformed, unoriginated. You can't imagine that. Your mind, actually your thinking mind stops trying to imagine something unformed, that unformed, unborn, unoriginated. Because it's where anything born or created, originated, you can imagine something or other, create some form, some quality or quantity or color, whatever, shape. But this is where you begin to notice that which is aware, where the thinking mind ceases, and nibbana also, your mind ceases. When you try to conceive nibbana or anatta. You know, what do you do? You know, usually now nibbana in the West is used as a kind of heavenly realm. So they say, I went to the Canary Islands and I was in nibbana. You know, so it's used, and even in Thailand they use it as in terms of the highest happiness. You know, so you recognize the limitation of thinking and language is that the highest, Buddha wasn't pointing to highest happiness at all. He's pointing to the Majjhima Patipata, which is not high, it's here and now. It's not an attainment that you have to get through doing anything, you know, and becoming anything. So so nibbana is kind of a word that leaves your mind blank, or anatta, non-self. And so people tend to think that non-self is like, you just become, you know, you're kind of a zombie, or you're dead, brain dead or something, you know, you no longer think anything. You know, the idea of being an arhat can sound like you're just kind of sitting there with no feelings or, you know, nothing going on in your mind. But it's not like that. You know, the thinking process then is not to be grasped, but it's just, you know, something to use but not grasp or identify with. So then this sense of the unborn, uncreated is recognized through awareness, through just letting go of everything and observing, being fully attentive, paying attention to the present, listening, in other words, in this wide kind of receiving way. And then I found the reason why I liked that, developed that, was because of my obsessive thinking habits. And I found, you know, that when I recognize this sound of silence, then the thinking process ceases. So I'm still aware. I'm not thinking about it. You know, there's a sense of total attention to the present. But it's not looking for anything to focus on. It's just a state of it's ekagata, in other words. It's what ekagata really is, or one-pointedness. It's not a point there, but it's this one point of wholeness or completeness. And then from that you get the perspective on you see the conditions. You can be aware of your own habits, your like obsessive feelings or fears or self-consciousness. Like I've always suffered from self-consciousness, and so just having, and then I find myself in this position where everybody's looking at me. It's ironic. And when I became a monk, actually, my idea was to disappear from the world. I thought going off into the jungles, disappearing from life was what I really found appealing to me. And then the opposite has happened. I've become the center of a group. So I've had to look at that, you know, the anxiety and the sense of self that being the object of other people's attention. So then, you know, seeing that now if I start thinking about it, then I can start suffering or resenting or doubting, whatever. But because of this sound of silence practice, I just developed this sense of resting in this, to where the self disappears, the self-consciousness goes. And then you can, you know, then your thinking process is much more of a skillful means rather than an obsessive, habitual pattern of thinking and reason and logic and views and opinions. So, you know, like the way it is, or Benyang Ni Ang, Buddhadasa's advice, suchness, da-da-da, the sense of it's like this, the Dhamma is this way, it's here and now, it's not defined and described, it's recognizable though. So through awareness and attention, you're recognizing Dhamma. It's recognizable, but you can't describe it. As soon as you start trying to describe it, then you're caught back into trying to describe, because descriptions only deal with form things and make judgments, value judgments that, put into right and wrong, good and bad. But awareness puts you in a state of pure consciousness without this distortion of clinging to conditioned emotions or perceptions that you create, views and opinions that you have. But you begin to see them, it doesn't mean you don't have any, but you're observing them from this, rather than, getting caught into them.